Hi there. So I've just started building a new baseboard for an Engage model railway, and it dawned on me it'd be good to do a little how-to video for beginners, if you like, on making a simple baseboard. Although the techniques would be the same even if you were building a bigger one. I believe it's what the Americans call bench work. So if you're in one of our North American viewers, I'm talking about bench work, and if it's the UK, it's baseboards. And I wanted to just show how simple it is, really, because it's one of those things, again, that there seems to be a lot of scaremongering on the internet and amongst railway people about how difficult it is, and it isn't. It's really, really easy. So I've not used complicated tools. I've got a hand saw, electric screwdriver and drill, surfform plane, countersink, steel rule. Steel rule works better, or a yard rule, better than a tape measure, I find, because you get that little overhangy bit at the end. But a tape measure will do it. And just as easily, if you didn't have any power tools, you could just as easily do it with a hand drill and a screwdriver. So you don't need a great deal of tools. So how have I built it? Well, normally what I used to do when I used to do baseboards is joints. So you do a halving joint. So if I pan slowly over here and show you sort of here somewhere on my baseboard, you'd cut a notch out, basically. The difficulty with that, unless you're quite good at what you do, and you've got really sharp tools and chisels and things, and a good eye for it, it's very difficult, in fact, to get nice straight edges, and then your baseboard wobbles. And I watched and read, I was reading one of the Pico guides, and they suggested this, and I thought, they're probably right, and they are. So this is much simpler. You make sure you've sawn your edges straight. You pre-drill. You must pre-drill or it will split. Pre-drill this bit, what's called a pilot hole. Countersink it, glue it, and screw it straight in. Now, another thing is, I built this on a glass garden table, but you need a nice flat surface to make sure it's going to go down square and level. The timber is just standard, what we used to call 2x1, and it's now sort of 45mm by 25mm. Why did I use this? Because it was free. It's left over from the build we've done. It was literally in the skip, as were the screws that I built it with. So it hasn't actually cost, well, it has cost me something because it's left over from a very expensive build. But technically for this project I didn't have to buy it. And if you go skip, and I believe the Americans call dumpster diving, which is a great term. If you go skip hunting, you can do it that way. But it's not over expensive to buy if you're going to buy it new. And then it's glued and screwed. And I'm really impressed about how rigid that has actually gone together. And it is really that simple. You cut the timber to length, you pre-drill it, countersink it, and screw it and glue it together. That probably took me, if I said an hour, I'd be being generous. Which brings us then to the next stage. So that's going to be the actual baseboard itself. Now, again, there's an awful lot of nonsense spoken about this. There's a few materials I wouldn't use. I wouldn't use hardboard because it warps. Thinner MDF tends to warp, but beyond that, it's fine. You get people saying, don't use this, don't do that, because the track pins won't go in. Well, that's true to a degree, but actually they'll go into most things. This happens to be chipboard. The old-fashioned things like Sundella and the fiberboard were used not necessarily because they're a particularly good baseboard, but for sound deadening, which is sort of a factor. This will echo a little bit with a harder surface, but actually once you put cork, in theory that silences it, and then you cover the cork in hard ballast, so it tends to negate it. So I'm not a great believer. In fact, if you go back further enough, one of the reasons things like Sundella and insulation board were used was because in the 50s and 60s the TVs weren't suppressed electrically, and what would happen is when you ran your trains, your TV would buzz. So there's a lot of reasons why the old materials were used. Why am I using this material? Guess! Because it was free. It's left over from the kitchen. It was in the skip. I'm sorry, but that's where we come from on budget model railways. But it's not a bad material to use. If I was going to buy it new, I'd probably use MDF. And I'm simply going to screw that down and in. Now, that's why some people will go say, well, why haven't you cross-braced here? Because I don't need to, because once you screw this in, this acts as the cross-bracing. So this traditional technique is quite clever. This way gets you level, and the flat board gives you rigidity in a square. And it's really going to be that simple. And then I'll screw the second part on, and you can, and it will be done. Simple screw in, and then we've got a nice solid rigid baseboard. So the next time somebody's saying bench work, baseboards, that sort of thing, really complicated, no it's not. Get some timber, drill some holes, screw and glue, and you can make a perfectly reasonable baseboard. Now this is the huge advantage of N. This is 3 foot by 21 inches. And that's going to give me a first radius oval and a great layout. In double O, this would need to be 6 foot by nearly, 42 inches. So getting on for 4 foot. So that is a much, much bigger space. That's out here somewhere. But exactly the same techniques would apply. You would just be putting more cross pieces in to support. But it does show the advantages of N gauge, I'm afraid, because I can get a really good layout in that space. People want to know why I'm doing that when I've got my big layout, but that'll be for another video, because this video is about how quick and easy it is to build baseboards. It's so quick and easy I can't even make the video 10 minutes long. It does make me smile when you see people doing hour-long videos on something that didn't take an hour to do. Yes, I could have shown you me drilling holes and gluing, and I could have done an editing job, but I don't have the editing software. Hopefully you can see it's that simple. Do you really need me to show you how to drill a hole and put a screw in? It's not complicated. So there you go. Don't let it put you off. If you want to build a baseboard, simple and quick.